Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about should you rent or buy equipment. So I recently got this fog machine off of Amazon for like $60. It's quite cheap for the price and I thought it was a good deal. And we wanted to get this for a client of mine that I'll be doing her photo shoot. And the thing is, when we were looking into fog system smoke machines, we realized the cost was ridiculous. Like it'll cost you almost $50 to rent one a day, and for a cheap one you can get it for $60. And we realized even for that cheap one it was going for $50 a day, which ultimately led us to asking the question, should you just rent or should you buy your own equipment? So in today's video I'm going to attempt to answer this for you guys. As we all know, equipment is expensive, especially in the film industry. Some of the stuff that we use for our services is expensive. Things such as cameras, things such as microphones, things such as lenses, they are quite expensive. When you're starting out, budget might be a big problem or not, depending on your financial situation. Based on my audience, I don't really know who I attract to these videos. But the main thing is, when you're thinking about whether you should rent or buy, my suggestion is always consider your budget. What's the budget? How much are we willing to spend? How much are we willing to essentially risk and lose, right? That's a question that depends on everybody else's. For me, I look at buying equipment as investing into myself and taking a bet on yourself, because once you have the equipment, then you have to use it. However, for some people, they might feel uncomfortable with this. The first thing that you have to consider are financial factors. How much is it going to cost you? How much do you have to spend? How much do you have left? And what's the cost benefit analysis? You want to look at your ROI, what's your return on investment? So as I said, for me, when I look at should I buy something, I do a lot of research on it. How much will that thing impact my production value and how much will it make me money? So what you want to think about is, I run my videos services as a business. So for me, all this is a service. I create content, which, people have said, oh, you're making free content. Yes, it's free to the user. It's free for you guys to watch me, but it's a business transaction between me and YouTube, where YouTube says, if you put out a video for free, we put ads on your video, we'll split the cash. So for me, I look at YouTube as a business partner. I'm in a business partnership with YouTube, whereby I provide them content. They provide me a platform to be able to distribute my content to you guys, and then that makes me money. So the better I make the videos, the better for you guys, the more people watch, and the more me and YouTube are able to split a check, at the end of the month. But in order to do that, I have to prove to YouTube that at least 1,000 people are interested in what I'm doing. At least those 1,000 people have watched my videos for 4,000 watch hours. And then that's how you get monetized on YouTube. And then in time, different groups of people will start coming in, where you start having sponsorships and stuff like that. So the financial factors for me is, does a better camera improve my videos? So when I'm looking at it, is what's the return on investment? So like, if I was to make a short film, again, you're looking at how much money, what's the budget? How much money do we need to rent a camera? So if renting a camera costs us $300 a day, all right? If I'm to shoot 12 short films in a year, that $300 then becomes, how many days on set do we need? Do we need 5-10 days? If it's 10 days, that's $3,000 for a short film. And if we are doing 10 short films a year, that's $30,000 in rental costs. Whereas if I was to spend $5,000 on an FX3 like I did, then that cost goes in once. In finance and accounting, we have a thing which we call sunk cost. Sunk cost essentially means whatever you pay for that thing, it's sunk, it's gone. We're starting from zero now. Now we start, that product or asset that you've purchased starts making you money. So my suggestion when it comes to should you rent or should you buy gear, you have to look at what's your budget, what's the sunk cost that you're willing to have. You have to look at the cost in totality. How much will that thing that you're buying affect you in the long run? So it's not just about, oh, I spent $5,000. If you buy a $5,000 camera today and you end up using that thing for 10 years and it makes you $5 million, that is a great return on investment. However, if you buy a $5,000 camera and that thing ends up not making you any money, then you've lost $5,000. All right. The second thing we have to think about in terms of should you rent or buy your gear is, what's the opportunity cost? So opportunity cost simply means is the cost of the thing foregone. So for example, if you have $1 this principle comes from like the principle of scarcity. So if you have $1 and in order to spend that dollar on either coffee or a hamburger, if you decide on buying a coffee, the opportunity cost is the hamburger, which you could have gotten that would have made you at least a little bit happier. So it's the same thing when you're thinking of this. Is if you have, let's say you want to buy the FX9 or whatever, the FX6 that costs say $10,000, right? If you have $10,000 in cash right now that you could use to purchase a new camera, what's your opportunity cost? What could that $10,000 be used for? It could have been used to pay off your student loans. It could have been used as a budget for your short film or for something. It could have been used for that. And then instead of spending $10,000 on a camera, you could have just rented out a camera at a fraction of the cost, right? We said, for example, if it costs, let's say, I don't know, $150 to rent out a camera and you have 5 shooting days, that ends up just costing you like 5 by 150, which is like $750 that you've spent in a week, in a 5-day shoot, compared to having spent $10,000. That other money could have been used for paying for locations, for your transport, for paying your cast, for paying your actors, for doing other things. You can use that money for other things. So that's the opportunity cost that you have to factor in. Or alternatively, you're looking at, if I'm investing $10,000 into my film, the opportunity cost is that camera. So these are things that you have to consider. A full frame camera costs upwards of $2,500. For example, me, the other thing is I'm a Sony user, so I when I'm speaking of camera prices, I'm mainly talking of Sony cameras. For some people will be like, hey, I use Blackmagic, and Blackmagic has affordable cost cameras that you can get at full frame. But the thing is, with any cinema line lens camera that you get, you're gonna end up having to spend more money in terms of accessories that are needed to make it functional for you and to make it something that you can use. So you want to think of all those things, like what's the alternative of where that money can go. You know how people say you shouldn't go to film school, you instead use the money you wanted to go to film school with to invest into your camera gear and learn whilst doing. That's the opportunity cost. So it's like, what's the cost benefit analysis of each decision that you want to make? Once again, for me, if you've been following my channel, you know that I recently purchased the FX3. So for me, I decided to go the route of owning a cinema line camera and to learn that way. For me, I believe that the money that I put in, it'll come, because I mainly use my FX3 for professional work. And with professional work, you're charging upwards of $10,000. So like, how much of that do you lose? How much of that, like 5,000? And for me, as the more projects come in, the better equipment that I'll be going for. But there are certain cameras that I cannot afford. For right now, my dream camera to get is the Sony Venice. So once we start hitting those like projects where you get paid 50, 100,000, it's a considerable thing to do. Whilst renting is fine. For me, I just believe in owning the equipment. And then the third thing is psychological factors. All right. So you want to think of the psychology of renting versus buying. For some people, renting, it means you don't own the thing. So the way I look at it is, when you're renting something, it's not yours. The way you treat it, the way you think about it, the way you handle something. If you've ever been, there's a going joke that we used to say is, you can tell a house where there are renters living in it and a house where the owner lives in it. You can look at the lawn, how the grass is cut, how they take care of their yards. It's different from a renter because they don't really care about any of it, how they handle things. So you want to consider those things as well, because if you decide just to rent camera gear, how much of it how much time do you spend learning that gear, and what's on your mind? You're constantly thinking of, I don't want to spend more money than I have to. So now you're short, you know what you are trying to do. You're cutting time. Like, I've been on sets whereby they know 8 until 10, that's how much you can rent the camera. After that, it's going into overtime. So you're limited in the sense of that. So the thing that happens is you become efficient with what you're doing. You have to be efficient and effective at getting your shots. Otherwise, it will cost you more money because you're renting the equipment, right? And there are terms and conditions. The other thing is, the other psychological factor about that is how you think about shooting, right? So this means anytime you're renting out, you're constantly thinking of, it's going to cost me money. And when money tends to be a reason a lot of people are not able to pursue their dreams and desires, right? So if you're constantly thinking of how will I afford this, or how much do I have to pay, how much will they charge me? The other thing that I think is in owning something, you take it seriously. I believe, let's say you spent $6,000 on an FX3, you're constantly thinking of, okay, I need to get my money back. I need to make this thing work. And it also just inspires you to work, because if you're waking up and your camera is right in front of you and you're not using it, that just leaves you with questions like, what am I doing here? My final thoughts are, for me, I realized that I would rather own gear that allows me to create videos like this, gear that's simple and allows us to have a professional grade, especially when you don't have money. With gear, you are in a position whereby you can use it to make money. And compared to if you have to rent, sometimes you don't have money, sometimes you don't have the budget, sometimes you don't have, life happens to all of us. I just don't know if I'm willing to spend a lot of money on camera gear in terms of rentals. But in terms of, there are some things that you want to use that you just use once off, I would rent those, things such as the smoke machines, things such as, like I don't normally use it. It's better to rent it. But I ended up buying this one because I was like, oh, it's $50. Regardless, like you're spending $50 to rent it and $50 to purchase it outright. The challenges that come with owning a lot of gear is storage and where to put it. Like, we literally had to convert our living room into a studio. So that means you don't get to have a living room and you don't get to have those things. And when I'm in conversations with like potential partners of living together, we have to constantly think about, okay, what does the storage system look like? So it's like, do you really want to end up owning a lot of gear when you don't have those things? Because it then affects your lifestyle and it affects how you move. So renting might not be a bad idea. And the cost, for me, I feel like cost is something that's massive. You before you know it, you'll be 20,000-30,000 in deep in equipment. And you're like, yo, I could have just spent a fraction of that to create the best possible picture. And sometimes, like with the FX3s, the A7 IVs, you can't really make feature films. So that means when you're making feature films, you're gonna still have to rent out gear. So in terms of should you rent or buy, my suggestion is you gotta ask yourself, what's the financial factors that you're thinking about? What's the opportunity cost? And what are the psychological factors that you care about? I believe in ownership. I'm not really a fan of not owning stuff, because if you own something, then you can make decisions on the fly and do what you need to do. But I also understand people who don't. So let me know in the comment section what you guys think about. If you need help setting financial goals, I made a video over here that can help you out. And then this video is something that YouTube thinks you enjoy. I'll see you in the next one.